So you said you got in on the ground floor of CSLI. Can you talk about the mission of CSLI and the context in which it developed and your part in it?
So I was not involved in actually applying for the grant. The grant came from something called the System Development Foundation, which was a foundation that the government had an organization that basically wrote all government software early on. And then they decided, rightly, that they shouldn't, that's not how you do software. You should be getting it from external contractors. So they sold this company. They created a company, the Systems Development Corporation, that the government sold. The money, the proceeds from that went into a foundation, and then the foundation had to spend those proceeds within 10 years or 20 years. I forget what the limit was. So they had to spend this money. One of the things that they spent it on was founding CSLI. And this was an interesting interdisciplinary research lab that was located at Stanford, mainly. That was kind of the headquarters, but also at Xerox PARC and at SRI. So we had researchers at both of those research labs, one commercial, one SRI, which is is commercial too. And it was interdisciplinary in that it had faculty in logic, linguistics, philosophy, psychology, computer science, and had various different focuses, but one of the main ones was on on AI in the sense of natural language processing, machine translation. There was a huge amount of interest in getting automatic translation to work. After the System Development Foundation funds kind of got used up, most of the funding came from Japan. So there were a lot of Japanese companies that were wealthy because Japan was booming at that time. This is in the kind of late 80s, early 90s. And they're booming, and they're creating products that they were selling all over the world, and then they had to have manuals in 27 languages. And the Japanese they don't tend to know a lot of languages other than Japanese. I mean, they're as bad as Americans. And so they were very interested in all kinds of natural language techniques, particularly translation. And they funded CSLI, and we did a lot of work there. And all of that work failed in some sense. I mean, with everything, you would get to a point where it looked like you were making progress, and then you would hit a brick wall. And sometimes the brick wall was like at 80% performance, like with optical character recognition, or speech recognition. 80%. Well, that means that every 10 words, 2 of them would be interpreted incorrectly. Well, of course, now we have Siri, and these are getting 98, 99, 99.9% accuracy, and with using very, very different techniques. So that was the area that was being worked on, and the results in general were kind of disappointing.
And back then, in the 1980s, early 90s, you were going to Japan frequently, and how did that collaboration work, or collaborations?
Well, I for a period was the director of CSLI immediately after getting tenure. Probably not good for my career, but there were no more senior faculty that were either willing to do it or that people were willing to let do it. So they asked me to direct the CSLI. And since we had all of these companies that were helping to support us, I spent a lot of time traveling to Japan and talking to their researchers, talking to their you know, presidents and CEOs and so forth, and looking at, you know, the research projects that they were doing, and then they would send people to see ours.
I have to interject your comment about being made director as associate professor. It prompts the thought that often faculty don't understand why deans, at least, and maybe provosts, are resistant to creating centers on request, and the answer is they take faculty time in a big way, and they distract from, sometimes distract from, you know, core.
Exactly. So anyway, I think I enjoyed directing CSLI, and it opened up a different kind of world to me, including the world of administration.
Yeah.
So I have to tell you that when I was director of CSLI, and this says something about faculty leadership. I was director of CSLI for 3 years, and in the 3rd year, I heard one of the staff members say on the phone, "Well, I'll have to ask my boss if I can do that." And I thought to myself, her boss? Who's she thinking about? And I realized I was her boss. It was not for 3 years as director that I recognized that I was the boss of the staff. And that is a flaw.
Well, I don't know that it's a flaw.